History's first empire rose out of a hot, dry landscape, without rainfall to nourish crops, without trees or stones for building. In spite of all this, its inhabitants built the world's first cities with monumental architecture and large populations, and they built them entirely out of mud. Sumer occupied the southern part of modern Iraq in the region called Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia means between two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Around 5000 BCE, early Sumerians used irrigation channels, dams, and reservoirs to redirect river water and farm large areas of previously bone-dry land. Agricultural communities like this were slowly springing up around the world, but Sumerians were the first to take the next step. Using clay bricks made from river mud, they began to build multi-storied homes and temples. They invented the wheel, a potter's wheel, for turning mud into household goods and tools. Those clay bricks gave rise to the world's first cities, probably around 4500 BCE. At the top of the city's social ladder were priests and priestesses who were considered nobility, then merchants, craftspeople, farmers, and enslaved people. The Sumerian Empire consisted of distinct city-states that operated like small nations. They were loosely linked by language and spiritual belief, but lacked centralized control. The earliest cities were Uruk, Ur, and Eridu, and eventually there were a dozen cities. Each had a king who served a role somewhere between a priest and a ruler. Sometimes they fought against each other to conquer new territories. Each city was dedicated to a patron deity, considered the city's founder. The largest and most important building in the city was this patron god's home, the ziggurat, a temple designed as a stepped pyramid. Around 3200 BCE, Sumerians began to expand their reach. The potter's wheel found a new home on chariots and wagons. They built boats out of reeds and date palm leaves, with linen sails that carried them vast distances by river and sea. To supplement scarce resources, they built a trade network with rising kingdoms in Egypt, Anatolia, and Ethiopia, importing gold, silver, lapis lazuli, and cedarwood. Trade was the unlikely impetus for the invention of the world's first writing system. It started as a system of accounting for Sumerian merchants conducting business with traders abroad. After a few hundred years, the early pictogram system called cuneiform turned into a script. The Sumerians drafted up the first written laws and created the first school system designed to teach the craft of writing, and pioneered some less exciting innovations like bureaucracy and taxes. In the schools, scribes studying from dawn to dusk, from childhood well into adulthood. They learned accounting, mathematics, and copied works of literature, hymns, myths, proverbs, animal fables, magic spells, and the first epics on clay tablets. Some of those tablets told the story of Gilgamesh, a king of the city of Uruk who was also the subject of mythical tales. But by the 3rd millennium BCE, Sumer was no longer the only empire around, or even in Mesopotamia. Waves of nomadic tribes poured into the region from the north and east. Some newcomers looked up to the Sumerians, adopting their way of life and using the cuneiform script to express their own languages. In 2300 BCE, the Akkadian king Sargon conquered the Sumerian city-states. But Sargon respected Sumerian culture, and Akkadians and Sumerians existed side by side for centuries. Other invading groups focused only on looting and destruction. Even as Sumerian culture spread, a steady onslaught of invasions killed off the Sumerian people by 1750 BCE. Afterward, Sumer disappeared back into the desert dirt, not to be rediscovered until the 19th century. But Sumerian culture lived on for thousands of years. First through the Akkadians, then the Assyrians, then the Babylonians. The Babylonians passed Sumerian inventions and traditions through along Hebrew, Greek, and Roman cultures. Some persist today. Sumer is credited with many firsts, including the first person to write the pronoun I. Learn about Enheduanna, high priestess of the moon god, desert exile, and history's first author.
الرجل هنا في دكره هناك في دكره من شرق تاني يا غالي يلا صعب تعال. We are not gonna stop digging. No, it is just the appetizer of the 4th season. We're gonna continue. And very soon, we're gonna find something really very important and very special over there. Coffins? Yes. Better shape, better condition? Yeah, that's what I saw from a narrow hole. But I'm gonna continue working.
Previous videos, we talk about the emergence of the Maurya Empire around 322 BCE, shortly after the invasion of Alexander the Great, as the first truly great Indian empire, and it unifies most of the Indian subcontinent. Now, that empire eventually falls, and the next significant empire to emerge, especially if we talk about influence on India and the world, is the Gupta Empire, which emerges over 500 years later. Now, let's zoom in on our timeline to get a deeper appreciation of the Gupta Empire. It's believed that its start was with Sri Gupta. He started the Gupta dynasty around 240. And it's disputed where they emerged. It might have been in that region or in that region. There's different accounts of where the Gupta dynasty initially emerged. But even in the early 300s, they really had a control of a few small kingdoms. It wasn't until the reign of Chandragupta I that it becomes a significant dynasty. And we need to be careful. Don't confuse this Chandragupta I with Chandragupta Maurya, who founded the Maurya dynasty over 600 years before the time we're talking about. Chandragupta I, it's interesting because he is really able to gain power, not initially through conquest, but through a marriage. He has a marriage with the princess Kumara Devi, and as a dowry, he's given control over much of this region of northeast India, this region of Magad or Magadha, and I am always having trouble pronouncing that, so my apologies, including the famous city of Pataliputra, which even at the time of the Maurya Empire and before the Maurya Empire, this was a famous seat of power. But once he's in control of this region, then he and his successors are able to have increased conquests over India. You see in this light blue color what his son Samudragupta was able to do, and then one of Samudragupta's sons, Chandragupta II, is able to conquer even more. But what makes the Gupta Empire distinctive isn't just that they were able to unify much or conquer much of India again. What really makes them distinctive is because of that unification, and especially the wealth that began to flow into the capital, they were able to be sponsors of significant culture and science and the arts. And that's why historians view the Gupta Empire as the golden age of India. And just to get an appreciation for this, the Gupta Empire was during the time of Kalidas, and he is considered to be the greatest writer ever in the Sanskrit language. He is like the William Shakespeare of Sanskrit. Beyond literature and writing, you have significant contributions to science, most notably Aryabhata. He's known for a very accurate approximation of pi, but even more important, a recognition that was an approximation and that he potentially recognized the irrationality of pi, one of the first to do so. The word sine, the trig function, is derived from Aryabhata's word for that function. And so he established some of the early ideas of trigonometry. He did work in summation. He did significant astronomical work, recognizing the rotation of the earth versus the rotation of the heavens. He had an early concept of gravity. Even some of these notions of the place value system and zero and decimal notation, many of our modern notions of it are traced back to Aryabhata. In other videos on the Islamic Golden Age, when we talk about folks like Al-Khwarizmi, a lot of his work was based on what he learned from Aryabhata. Beyond the sciences, and once again, this is just a sample of all that happened during this period. You have the significant Hindu epics, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Puranas, get written down and formalized. You could say they were canonized. The game of chess, or the early version of the game of chess, was invented, called Chaturanga, and they had horsemen, which were the knights. They had infantry, which were the pawns. They had elephants, which eventually turned into bishops. But as it migrated into Persia, the Muslim world, and then into Europe, it became our modern game of chess. Famously, there's this iron pillar that is now in New Delhi that is traced back to the time of the Gupta Empire and is believed to the reign of Chandragupta II. And what's amazing about this is a pillar that's over 20 feet high, made out of wrought iron, and over 1,500, 1,600 years, it hasn't corroded. And it has inscriptions on it that help historians point to the Gupta Empire. This was some of the coinage of the Gupta Empire. So the big takeaway here is this was India's golden age, the classical period of India. A lot of modern Hinduism and Indian culture can be traced back to this time period. But it isn't just its influence on India. In other videos, we talk about the Islamic golden age, and much of that golden age, which emerges 200, 300, 400 years after the Gupta Empire falls, much of that work is based on the discoveries and the work that is collected during the time of the Guptas. And then that becomes a bridge eventually to the European Renaissance. Now, like all empires, the Gupta Empire does eventually fall. In the mid-6th century, it's believed, around 540, 550. And one of the main causes, there's invasions from people called the Hunas, who historians believe are either the Huns or a group that are closely related to the Huns. It's considered to be one of the causes of the eventual decline of the Gupta dynasty.
Sacred city of Caral Supe. The ancient settlement of Caral is in Peru, South America. It's here that the remains of the oldest known civilization in South America have been found. 6 pyramidal structures can still be seen in an area covering over 600 hectares, which more than 4,500 years ago was a thriving community. This is Pirámide Mayor, the largest pyramid on the site. The stones used to make the walls are cut evenly. The largest stone used in this pyramid weighs over 500 kilograms. The pyramid is 20 meters high. A small room built on top is believed to have been used for religious ceremonies. Some items found on the site support this theory. A clay figurine with long hair, colourful costume and necklaces bears the same characteristics as a shaman from that period. It was believed that they were able to communicate with gods. Some interesting and unique building techniques were used in the pyramid structure located in a seismic area. Inside the walls, string is woven between the stones. Stones were placed inside nets made of plant fibre before being placed on top of each other. It's believed that such nets acted as shock absorbers during earthquakes. It suggests that these people had already developed anti-seismic building methods. There's an interesting geoglyph in the corner of the site, a human face in profile with stones on the ground. The civilization which grew here could have laid the roots for the Nazca and Inca civilizations. Within this ancient circle, various items have been uncovered. For example, a number of flutes made of pelican and condor bones. No weapons have been found as yet on the site, so archaeologists and anthropologists are asking whether this was a community that made music rather than war.